Welcome to the Narrative Mindset Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, I would appreciate it if you went back and viewed previous episodes when you get time. I was walking along the edge of the docks that morning, looking at the boats rocking the way tired men rock their knees when they're waiting for life to give them something new. And I was thinking, isn't it peculiar how the sea looks calm when it's hiding danger and wild when it's actually safe? And as I was thinking that, I saw the old man again, thin as a rumor, leathery as if the sun had taken a bite out of him and decided to keep chewing. He was preparing his little skiff, tying knots with his hands that looked like they'd been carved out of rope instead of bone. And I remember thinking, a man that old shouldn't still be fighting the sea. But then I corrected myself, or maybe he has to. Because stopping would mean admitting it's done. He looked up at me and nodded. The kind of nod that says everything and nothing. And I nodded back, pretending I understood him. Even though nobody really understands old men who still chase impossible things. I watched him set off, pushing his boat away from the dock like he was letting go of an old argument. And I whispered, "There he goes, fighting nature like it owes him a rematch." The sea was flat at first, suspiciously flat. And I was thinking about how it tricks you with stillness, like a person who smiles too much. You learn not to trust anything that calm. And the old man rode farther and farther out into the flatness, his shoulders rising and falling like he was arguing with the ocean in slow motion. And I started imagining what he was thinking. Because men like him don't say things out loud. Their thoughts are like fish that only surface when they're dying. Maybe he was thinking about the fish he hadn't caught in 84 days. Maybe he was thinking about the boy who used to help him, and how losing help makes a man feel older than losing years. The sun climbed higher, and it looked like it was trying to burn a hole through the world. And I was thinking about how the sea turns silver under heat. Like it's dressed up for an event nobody invited you to. Meanwhile, the old man kept going, rowing with that stubborn rhythm that only the defeated know. A rhythm that says, if I stop now, I might never start again. He cast his line with a kind of ceremony, slow and deliberate. Like he was offering the sea a final chance to be kind. And I laughed because that's what fishing really is. Offering hope to the water and waiting to see if the water spits it back to you. And then something tugged the line. Not a tap, not a nibble, a real tug. The kind that makes a man straighten his spine, even if his spine has forgotten how. And I imagined them thinking, there you are. I knew you were out here. I knew something was waiting for me. Because it's funny. When a man has nothing left, He becomes convinced the universe owes him one miracle. Just one. And he's willing to roll into nothingness to collect it. The old man held the line with both hands. And I was thinking how peculiar it was that something so thin could carry the weight of a man's entire dignity. And I imagined him muttering to himself, "Steady now, steady." Because when you're old and alone on the water, you talk to yourself the way younger men talk to God. The fish didn't just pull, it moved. Slow, certain, like it knew exactly how strong it was. And the old man braced his feet against the wooden boards. And I thought, that's the stance of a man who's tired of losing, but prepared to lose again anyway. His eyes were bright. Too bright for a man with that many days behind him. The fish began to tow the skiff out to sea, dragging it like a stubborn child pulling a parent towards something dangerous. And I imagined the old man thinking, this is no ordinary fish. This is the one. Because every old fighter believes in the one, the final opponent worthy of what's left inside him. Hours went by, and the sun turned mean, stabbing light down at the water like it wanted to blind anything that dared to look up. The man's hands were bleeding, soft, slow blood. The kind that leaks instead of flows. And he probably thought, it's all right. Blood is a part of the payment. I found myself thinking how strange it is that suffering makes a person feel alive more than comfort ever does. Pain is honest. Comfort lies. The fish dove deep, taking the line with it. And the old man had to let himself be pulled forward until his chest almost kissed the edge of the boat. And he whispered something, maybe to the fish, maybe to himself. Something like, "Don't break me. Not yet." And I thought, that's the quiet prayer of every person who's ever chased something too big. Night came sneaking in behind them, carried on a breeze that smelled like salt and cigarettes. The stars blinked awake, and the sea turned black. The kind of black that makes you confront pieces of yourself you'd rather leave in the dark. The fish kept moving. The man kept holding. Neither would yield. And I imagined him thinking, we're bound now, you and me. If you die, I die. If you live, I live. And that confused me for a second, because it sounded like madness. Tying your fate to a creature that owes you nothing. But then I realized, maybe that's what purpose is. Choosing something that pulls you somewhere you didn't plan to go. Hours slipped past like guilty thoughts. The boat drifted farther than the old man had ever been. Farther than anyone had reason to be. And he looked up at the sky, at all the unreachable distance. And I thought he might be wondering why struggle always leads you away from the places you intended to stay. And then, in the quiet between waves, he whispered, "Fish, I love you, but I will beat you." I found myself saying, that's the truest kind of love. Admiration wrapped in conflict. And the sea carried them both deeper into the unknown. The night settled thick and heavy. The kind of night that feels like it's leaning on you, testing your ribs. The old man felt the line shudder in his hands. That slow, deliberate pull of the fish far below. Not frantic, not panicked, but purposeful. And I was thinking how peculiar it is when strength reveals itself through patience rather than force. The fish wasn't fighting to escape. It was fighting to endure. The old man shifted his weight, bones clicking like old hinges. And he whispered, "Easy, easy now." And I imagined him thinking, if I rush, I lose. If I tire, I lose. If I doubt, I lose. It was strange watching a man negotiate with exhaustion like it was a business partner. A small wave slapped the side of the skiff. I heard him mutter, that one wasn't necessary. Like the sea had crossed the line. And I found myself laughing at how lonely men tend to argue with nature as if it's an equal. I suppose after enough years, everything becomes a conversation. The fish tugged again. A long, steady drag. And the old man leaned back just enough to keep balance. His hands were raw now, bleeding in the quiet way old skin bleeds. The way it opens without ceremony. And I was thinking how hands tell stories long before voices ever do. Those hands had lived too many days of sun, salt, rope, and regret. Hours turned into a slower kind of time. The kind that doesn't track itself in minutes, but in breaths. I imagine the old man thinking, this is good. This is clean. A fight worth having. And that stuck with me because not every struggle is a clean one. Some battles smear you in mud and shame. But this was just a man and a fish and a line between them. No lies, no interruptions, no witnesses. At one point, the fish surged deeper, and the boat lurched forward, and the old man gasped. The kind of gas that comes from surprise rather than fear. And he whispered, "He's strong, stronger than I expected." And I thought, that's how life gets you. It tests you harder on the days you feel weakest. He drank from the water jug, the kind of small sip reserved for rationing or reverence. And he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "We go on," he said gently, as if the fish needed reassurance. The moon rose, big and bright, turning the sea into a sheet of broken silver. And I found myself staring at the reflection, thinking how the moon never touches the water, but always pretends to. There's something lonely in that. Something familiar. The old man shifted again, all stiff joints and quiet determination. He whispered, "I wish the boy were here." And I felt that hard, because every person, no matter how self-sufficient, has one moment where they wish for witnesses, not to validate them, but to simply understand them. But the boy wasn't there. It was just him, the fish, the line, and the night. And I imagined him thinking, if I die out here, at least I die doing something that still has meaning. The boat drifted farther into the darkness, and the old man held on, his hands trembling just enough to betray how much strength he had already spent. And the fish kept pulling, calm and steady, like a heart guiding them both toward an inevitable truth. The dawn came in slow, like it wasn't sure it wanted to commit to another day. The sky peeled open with a tired kind of blue. The one that looks like it hasn't slept. The old man blinked at the horizon, his eyes watering, not from emotion, but from the simple insult of morning light. And I was thinking how peculiar it is, after a long night of struggle, daylight feels less like relief and more like exposure. The line vibrated in his hands, a faint shiver, like the fish was reminding him, I'm still here. And he nodded to himself, as if responding to a question nobody asked. Good, he whispered. You're a worthy one. And I imagined him thinking, if you were small, I resent you. But big things deserve respect. His back ached in that deep, quiet way old backs ache. The kind of pain that doesn't shout. Just settles in like a tenant who stopped asking permission. He shifted his weight, carefully, slowly, and muttered, everything hurts except the parts I need. And I smiled because that's what survival is. Not the absence of pain, but the selective ignoring of it. The fish rose suddenly, not to the surface, but higher in the water, as if reconsidering its direction. The line drew tighter. The boat jerked. The old man's breath caught. And for a moment, both were suspended in the same trembling question. Who will give first? The old man whispered, "Not me." Then, almost immediately, "Please, not me." And that's when I realized bravery and begging often share the same breath. He pulled a little, testing the fish, and the fish pulled back, testing the man. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was a conversation made of force, a negotiation, a truth-telling. The sun climbed higher, and the heat wrapped around him like a punishment. Sweat stung his eyes, his hands swollen and cracked, twitched every time the line shifted. I imagined him thinking, a younger man would have ended this already. But he wasn't a younger man. He was a weathered one, hardened by days that didn't care about him. He ate a bit of tuna he'd caught earlier, raw, tough, chewing slowly, thoughtfully, like each bite was a memory. "This will keep me going," he murmured, though his face said otherwise. And I found myself thinking about how humans convince themselves with half-truths simply to endure. Near noon, the fish made a run, a powerful sudden surge that snapped the boat sideways and dragged it several yards. The old man grunted, every muscle in his body flaring awake. And he held on with a desperation that had both dignity and fear mixed into it. He said, through clenched teeth, "You are my brother, but I will beat you." And that line hit me heavy, because it sounded like something a man says to his own destiny. The fish slowed again. The sea quieted. The world shrank down to one line, one man, one will. And as the sunlight cut the ocean into brilliant shards of gold, the old man whispered to himself, "This is the day. This is the fish. This is the fight." And I imagined him thinking, if I lose him, I lose myself. And if I win him, maybe I find whatever's left in me. The sea rocked him gently, like a cradle too big for comfort. The battle, far from ending, was only sharpening. The heat settled on the old man's shoulders, like a sentence handed down by a judge who didn't believe in mercy. The air itself felt thick, like it had weight. And I was thinking how strange it is that sunlight, something meant to give life, can feel like it's trying to take yours when you're already worn thin. The fish made another slow, deliberate turn beneath him, and the line shifted, humming with quiet purpose. The old man straightened as much as his spine allowed and whispered, "He's circling. He's thinking." And I imagined him thinking, a creature so big shouldn't have thoughts. But here he is, planning like a man. The boat rocked in a lazy rhythm, and the sea around him sparkled as if mocking his exhaustion. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the long, unrelenting grip on the line. The skin had split in new places, little red mouths opening on his palms. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he noticed everything and simply refused to care. He murmured, almost to himself, "I must not let him rest. If he rests, I'll lose him." And I thought about how many people live their entire lives in that same fear, afraid that if they stop pushing, stop grinding, stop fighting, the thing they've been chasing will drift too far to reach. The fish tugged again, a slow, steady pull that felt like a challenge. The old man nodded, as if accepting the terms. "All right then," he said. "If you want it this way, we do it this way." I imagined him thinking, this isn't a battle anymore. This is a promise. The hours dragged on, melting into one another. The sun moved across the sky like it was tired of watching. The old man's breath came shallow, measured, the kind of breathing people use when they're tired and trying not to collapse. He leaned back slightly, testing the tension in the line. "You're slowing," he whispered. "You're getting tired." And then after a moment, "So am I." And then another, "But I've been tired longer than you've been alive." That felt like the truest thing he'd said all day. A small bird landed on the edge of the skiff. A little thing with thin legs and worried eyes. And it chirped at him like it had advice to give. The old man smiled, weak and crooked. "Even you know I'm in over my head," he said. And I thought, even nature sends witnesses when a struggle becomes too poetic to ignore. The fish surfaced once, just a hint, a flash of silver, a suggestion of its size. before diving again. The old man's eyes widened. He whispered, "He's a giant, bigger than any I've seen." And I imagined him thinking, if I land him, the village will talk about it for decades. If I fail, no one will know how close I came. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak in that. Victory no one sees. Battles no one you fought for. Late in the afternoon, his legs began to cramp. His shoulders knotted. His lips cracked from salt and sun. But he tightened his grip, whispering, "Not yet, not yet. Not until he breaks before I do." The fish pulled again, weaker this time, but still powerful. And the old man closed his eyes, letting the strain travel through every part of him, every ache, every memory, every reason he had left to keep holding on. And I imagined him thinking, this is the last great thing I will ever do. Let it be enough. The sea went silent around them, almost too silent. The kind of silence that comes right before something changes. The fight hadn't ended, but something in it had shifted. I woke up before the sun again, and I don't know why I keep doing that. Because it's not like the morning rewards me for it. I rolled out of bed the same way the old man rolled out of his boat, slow and stubborn, and convinced today might be different, even though yesterday had already proven it wouldn't be. And as I walked to the kitchen, I noticed how quiet everything was. That deep blue silence right before dawn, where even the refrigerator hum feels like it's holding its breath. And I caught myself thinking, why am I doing all this? Why do I keep fighting currents that have already dragged stronger people under? And then I laughed at myself. Because that's the same kind of thought you have when you've been pushing too long. You convince yourself your struggle is heroic instead of just tiring. I made coffee and watched the steam rise. And it reminded me of the old man watching the mist lift off the water. And I thought, there's something strange about watching something disappear while knowing it never really existed. And that led me to think about how I chase progress like it's a marlin, huge, shimmering, expensive. The kind of thing you swear you'll reel in, even if your hands are bleeding. And then I started wondering if I even want the marlin anymore. Or if I'm just scared of being the guy who came home empty-handed. I stepped outside. Cold air. The kind that makes you squint like you're staring at destiny. I saw the streetlights flicker, and I told myself, that's a sign. Even though I didn't know what the sign was for. But I do that a lot. Assign meaning to random things so I don't feel alone in the universe. It's a habit I've grown comfortable with, like carrying invisible fish line in my head. Then I saw a neighborhood stray cat walk across the road, slow and confident, like it owned the block. And I thought, look at that. No job, no goals, no sense of failure. And it still walks like it knows exactly where it's going. Meanwhile, I'm out here trying to wrestle a metaphorical fish bigger than my whole life. And then my brain did that thing where it spirals into a lesson I didn't ask for. Like, maybe struggle is only noble in books. And in real life, it's just exhausting. Or maybe the sea doesn't care how hard you try. It just offers what it offers. But I shook that off because I didn't want to start the day by disappointing myself. Instead, I told myself something simple. Just row. Don't imagine the marlin yet. Don't imagine the sharks yet. Just row. And maybe that was enough for the morning. Just the old man, the sea, and me all trying not to think too far ahead. I headed out in the day the same way the old man pushed his skiff into the surf, slow and steady, pretending not to notice the ache in his bones. And as I walked, I caught myself thinking about how much effort it takes just to begin something. People talk about finishing, about perseverance, about grit. But nobody warns you that the hardest part is often just deciding to move at all. I felt that heaviness in my chest, like a tide that hasn't decided whether to rise or swallow. And I kept thinking, why does everything feel heavier before it even starts? Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's fear. Or maybe it's just habit. And I've grown used to bracing for battles that haven't even arrived. I got in my car, and the door closed with that soft, hollow thump that makes you feel sealed away from the world. And I noticed the way my steering wheel felt warm from the early sun. And I thought about how warmth can trick you, make you think everything is okay when it's really just temporary comfort dressed up as peace. But I put the car in drive anyway, and that felt like casting a line. Just choosing a direction and hoping something meaningful bites. And while I drove, I kept glancing at the empty passenger seat, thinking about how the old man had nobody but the sea to talk to. And how sometimes I do the same thing with silence. I'll ask it questions like it owes me answers, even though silence never promises anything. I stopped at a red light and looked up at the sky, this huge blue expanse that didn't even care if I struggled or succeeded. And for a moment I felt small, but not in a bad way. More like relieved. Like the universe wasn't watching me closely enough to judge. And then I thought, maybe that's the whole trick to surviving. Realizing you're not being graded by the sky. But then another thought slipped in, because they always come in pairs. If nobody's watching, then it's also up to you to keep growing. And that hit me harder than I expected. Responsibility without applause. Effort without witness. Progress that might only matter to you. I drove on, and I imagined the old man out there on the open water, hands blistered, heart stubborn, still believing the marlin was worth chasing simply because he needed it to be. And I understood him, maybe more than I wanted to, because sometimes you fight the sea, not to win, but to prove you're still capable of fighting. And for the first time that day, I told myself something quietly, almost like a secret. Even if the marlin doesn't come, I'll show up to the shore tomorrow. I stopped in the store, and for some reason, the automatic doors opening felt like the kind of permission, like the world was saying, all right, you can come in now. Even though it does that for everyone. And I started thinking about how strange it is that we look for meaning in things built by engineers, not prophets. But I kept walking, pushing a cart that had one squeaky wheel. And that wheel became a whole metaphor in my mind. I thought, isn't that just like life? One wheel always acting up, reminding you nothing rolls as smooth as you imagined. And then I caught myself laughing at the thought, because I knew I was doing the thing again, turning everything into symbols, giving emotional weight to a grocery cart like I was auditioning for some philosophical weather report. I passed the seafood section, and there it was. A huge fish laid out on ice. A marlin? No. Just a big salmon. But my brain didn't care. It saw the shape. It made the connection. And suddenly, I was standing there at it, like it held the answer to questions I hadn't even fully asked. I thought, this is what the old man wanted, a victory he could point to, something real, something people could see and say, look what he did. And then my mind did a little twist on itself. But even when he got his marlin, he still lost it. The sharks took it. The sea took it. And he still had to drag it home. Like proof of a struggle nobody would ever fully appreciate. I felt that one, like in my chest, like someone dropped a stone in my stomach and waited for the splash. Because isn't that what we do? We drag home the skeletons of our efforts, hoping someone understands the fight we went through, hoping someone sees more than just the bones. I grabbed a few things I didn't even need: gum, a bottle of water, a snack. And I realized I was walking through the store the way the old man drifted on the current, half in reality, half in the ocean of his own thoughts. And I wondered, am I doing the same thing? Navigating aisles like the tides, picking up items like I'm checking the bait. At the checkout, the cashier asked if I wanted a bag. And for a moment, I overthought it way too hard. I hesitated, like she asked me whether I believed in destiny. And I thought, why is it so easy to fight marlins in my imagination, but so hard to make simple decisions in the real world? I shook it off eventually, said yes, took the bag, walked out. The sunlight hit me different this time. Sharp, bright, unapologetic. And I felt this small pulse of clarity. The old man didn't need the marlin. He needed the fight. And maybe I'm just realizing I do too. Even if the ocean doesn't reward me, even if the sharks come, even if all I drag home is a skeleton of effort, I'll still go back out. Because some part of me needs to know I tried. I drove home with the grocery bag sitting in the passenger seat. And for some reason, it looked strangely human. Like it was slouched there after a long day. And I caught myself thinking, isn't it peculiar how objects pick up our moods? Like the bag was tired because I was tired. Like the whole world syncs to whatever rhythm your thoughts are pounding out. And I hit a slow patch of traffic. I started imagining the bag as the marlin skeleton, something I was dragging home that only meant something to me. And I thought, that's the thing nobody tells you. Half the battles you win won't look like victories to anyone else. They look like errands, like boring Tuesday afternoons, like grocery bags and red lights. I turned on the radio, but the static between stations sounded like the ocean. And that pulled me into a whole other spiral. And I thought, maybe the old man didn't hear waves. Maybe he heard doubt. That soft, shifting, endless sound of, what if you fail? Washing up against the whole of his mind. And I wondered how many times he almost turned back. How many times I almost do. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a minute with the engine ticking, cooling down. And that ticking reminded me of patience and aging and pressure releasing. Not all at once, but gradually. The way life teaches you lessons you didn't ask for. I picked up the bag and felt how light it was. And suddenly that bothered me. I thought, why does everything feel lighter than the weight I carry inside? And then another thought came right behind it. The way they always do. Maybe the weight was never in the bag. Maybe it was always in me. Inside the house, I set the bag on the counter. Simple, ordinary. But the moment it touched the surface, it felt like landing after drifting. Like tying a rope to a dock post after being lost at sea in your own mind. I unpacked the items one by one. Water bottle, gum, snack, random nonsense. Nothing heroic, nothing worth a story. But as I put them away, I realized something that hit me hard, harder than it should have. Most of life isn't the marlin. Most of life is the preparation for the chance to catch one. The small motions, the quiet routines, the repetitive acts, they teach your hands how to keep going. And I realized maybe that's why the old man kept returning to the sea, not because he expected greatness every day, but because he needed the possibility of it. And as I closed the cupboard door, I whispered to myself, almost without meaning to, tomorrow I'll go back out too, even if I don't know what I'm chasing. I sat down on the edge of my bed, like it was the side of the old man's skiff, the spring creaking under me, the same way the boat must have groaned under the weight of his stubbornness. And I thought, it's funny how even a bed can feel like a vessel when your mind won't stop drifting. I ran my hands over my knees, feeling the tiredness settle there. And I wondered why fatigue always sinks into joints first. Like disappointment has a GPS for the body. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. And the little imperfections in the paint looked like constellations. And that made me think of the old man again, staring up at real stars, not drywall freckles, using them to guide himself, to orient his loneliness. I thought, maybe that's the difference between his world and mine. He had stars. I have LED bulbs. And then I shook my head because that felt too dramatic, even for me. But then I corrected myself, because that's what I do. I thought, no, the real difference is he trusted the journey, even when the sea mocked him. Meanwhile, I get knocked off course by a bad thought before breakfast. I closed my eyes, but my mind didn't follow. I started thinking about how the old man talked to himself on the boat. Not because he was lonely, but because saying things out loud make them real. And I realized I do the same thing. I narrate my life in my head, like someone else is listening. Like there's an audience taking notes on my minor triumphs and my quiet failures. And I wondered if that's how we stay afloat, by telling ourselves stories about why we keep rowing. I rolled onto my side, and the mattress dipped in a way that felt like shifting tide. And I thought, maybe rest isn't really rest. It's just a pause between battles. That's when it hit me. The old man didn't sleep because he was tired. He slept because he needed strength for the next fight. Even if he didn't know when it was coming. I got up again because lying still made me feel like I was wasting momentum. I walked to the window and looked outside. The street was empty. That late night emptiness that feels like the world took a breath and forgot to exhale. And for a moment, I felt this kind of clarity. Like I could hear the ocean hidden under the pavement. The distant hum of cars became waves crashing. The flicker of a street lamp became moonlight on water. And I thought, maybe the sea isn't a place. Maybe it's a state of mind. Maybe we all have our own oceans. Those vast, quiet spaces where we test our strength against something we can't name. Where we chase things we don't fully understand. Where we measure ourselves in invisible ways. I whispered, I'm still here. And it sounded like an oar dipping into dark water. Not a victory, not a loss, just a reminder. Because sometimes the bravest thing the old man did wasn't chasing the marlin. It was simply refusing to stop going back to the sea. And maybe that's my courage too. The endless returning. The stubborn drifting forward. The belief that tomorrow's tide might bring something worth fighting for. The next morning, I woke up with the sun just peeking over the horizon, pale and cautious. I thought about the old man on his skiff, hauling his marlin home, exhausted, battered, but alive in a way only those who wrestled with impossible things can understand. And I realized that survival isn't about the victory. It's about the persistence. It's about showing up over and over, even when the outcome doesn't favor you. I imagined him dragging the fish behind the boat. Every fin and scale a testament to the struggle. A map of effort. Every aching muscle. Every heartbeat spent on the fight. The sea was calm, almost gentle, like it knew the lesson had been learned. And I thought, life is like that. The calm always comes after the storm, but it doesn't erase the fight. It just frames it differently. I pictured him finally stepping into the shore, the skeleton of the fish beside him, proof that something magnificent had existed, even if it had been taken. And I whispered to myself, the journey matters more than the trophy. Because the battle had revealed the old man's strength, patience, dignity, and stubborn courage. All the things that the marlin couldn't take. All the things that weren't visible to anyone except him. I thought about the boy, waiting somewhere, eyes wide, hope intact, ready to learn from this story of effort and loss. And I realized the fight doesn't end with one man, one day, or one catch. It carries in quiet ways, teaching persistence, humility, and the weight of living honestly. And then I reflected, maybe that's why we keep going out into our own seas. Our struggles may seem small, our victories fleeting, but each effort leaves a mark, a lesson, a shape in the world that wasn't there before. I sat in the silence of my room, imagining the old man sleeping now, body exhausted but soul steady, and I whispered quietly, almost as if speaking to the ocean itself. I'll keep rowing. I'll keep trying. I'll keep chasing my marlins, even if the sharks take them away, because there's something sacred in the fight, something that cannot be stolen. The sun rose fully. The world went on, and the echo of their fight, stubborn, lonely, beautiful, stayed with me, like a tide I couldn't ignore.